3I Atlas was discovered on July 1st by the NASA-funded Atlas survey.
The discovery surrounding 3I/Atlas has sent ripples of astonishment through both the scientific community and the general public. This interstellar object, initially catalogued much like its predecessors 1 Oumuamua and 2 I/Borisov, was expected to be another celestial visitor, a fragment from a distant system passing briefly through our neighborhood before vanishing back into the dark reaches of space.
A large object about 10 light years away moving toward Earth.
Yet what NASA has revealed about 3I/Atlas goes far beyond the ordinary. Sensors have detected that there is something inside the object, something alive. And most astonishing of all, it appears to be moving with intent toward our solar system. This revelation challenges not only astrophysics, but also the fundamental way humanity has conceived of its place in the cosmos. Before we start, smash the like and subscribe buttons for more updates. At first, astronomers believed 3I/Atlas to be a comet-like body, shedding faint tails of gas and dust as sunlight heated its surface. Its irregular trajectory and fluctuating brightness, however, soon raised suspicions. Sophisticated instruments aboard space-based observatories tracked oscillations from within the object, signals that did not match ordinary geological or chemical reactions. Patterns emerged that resembled pulsations or rhythmic discharges, the kind that biological processes can produce. The idea of something alive inside an interstellar visitor seemed improbable, yet the data spoke with unnerving clarity. These rhythms were not random. They displayed consistency, persistence, and adaptation as the object neared regions of stronger stellar influence. As the news spread, the narrative transformed from curiosity to profound astonishment. For the first time, astronomers were not speaking in terms of inert rock, frozen gases, or mechanical debris, but of life itself. Life traveling across interstellar distances encased within a protective shell. The concept of panspermia, the idea that life could be transported between worlds or even between star systems via comets and asteroids, had long existed on the margins of scientific speculation. Now, with 3I/Atlas, humanity was staring at evidence that might anchor those speculations in reality. The living presence inside the object hinted at survival strategies unimaginable to terrestrial biology. Protected within layers of ice and rock, this entity, or entities, appeared to have endured eons of exposure to radiation, vacuum, and cosmic cold, only to stir once more as it drew nearer to the warmth of another star. The object's trajectory heightened the drama. Instead of skimming past the solar system as its predecessors had done, 3I/Atlas adjusted course. Subtle changes in velocity suggested a response to external conditions, almost like steering. Astronomers calculated its vectors and realized that it was not simply passing by, it was approaching. The precision with which it shifted direction challenged any assumption of randomness. Natural gravitational interactions could not fully explain its altered path. Whatever lived inside 3I/Atlas was not only surviving, it was moving toward us with an unmistakable sense of intention. This revelation sparked profound debates. Was it possible that a life form could evolve to manipulate its protective host body on such vast scales? Could an organism, or perhaps a collective of organisms, exert enough influence to guide an entire interstellar object? These questions cut into the boundaries between biology and astrophysics, forcing the two disciplines into dialogue like never before. Some argued that the behavior suggested not merely survival, but intelligence. If so, humanity might not be looking at a simple microbial stowaway, but at a voyager, an ancient traveler harnessing the cold vessels of space to wander from star to star. The implications for science were staggering. If life existed within 3I/Atlas, it would demonstrate that biology is not confined to the delicate cradle of Earth's ecosystems. Instead, life might be more resilient, more versatile, and more widespread than ever imagined. The conditions once thought hostile to any kind of biological process, extreme radiation, absolute cold, cosmic isolation, could instead be revealed as part of a greater cycle of persistence. This would mean that life is not the exception, but a natural outcome of the universe's processes, seeded across galaxies in countless variations. The discovery would also ignite a new era of astrobiology, shifting the search for life from exoplanetary atmospheres to the dark, drifting bodies that travel between stars. As the object drew nearer, NASA and its international partners monitored every detail, Radio telescopes strained to capture emissions, deep space probes realigned to extend observation ranges, and theoretical physicists scrambled to model scenarios. The more data streamed in, the more compelling the case became. The signals were not chaotic noise, but coherent fluctuations. They shifted with consistency, almost like communication or feedback loops. Patterns emerged, resembling cycles of rest and activity, perhaps analogs to biological respiration or metabolic processes. The possibility that humanity was witnessing a living process on an astronomical scale left even the most skeptical scientists without easy dismissal. The presence of life within 3I/Atlas also rekindled deep philosophical and cultural reflections. For millennia, humans have looked at the stars and wondered whether they were alone. The discovery that something alive had crossed the abyss between stars to enter our system redefined that question. It no longer seemed a matter of whether life existed elsewhere, but rather of how frequently such wanderers moved between systems and whether such encounters had happened before, unnoticed in humanity's infancy. Ancient myths of gods descending from the sky or messengers arriving in fiery chariots suddenly took on new symbolic resonance, as though echoes of forgotten encounters might have been preserved in cultural memory. The idea that the life inside 3I/Atlas was approaching with intent also generated a mixture of fascination and unease. If it was intelligent, what could its purpose be? Was it seeking contact, exploration, or merely warmth and resources? The concept of a traveling life form harnessing cosmic vessels raised questions about survival strategies across epochs. Perhaps civilizations older than humanity had discovered ways to preserve themselves through dormancy, embedding consciousness or biology within protective shells to awaken when conditions allowed. Or perhaps the life within 3I/Atlas was not intelligent in the sense humans understand, but still possessed instincts powerful enough to guide its movement across unimaginable distances. As observers studied its approach, they noted changes in the object's surface behavior. Jets of material erupted in symmetrical patterns, unlike the random sublimation typical of comets. These outflows appeared coordinated, each burst adjusting momentum incrementally. To many, it seemed the object was actively piloting itself, though not through mechanical thrusters but through biological or biochemical means. The thought that life itself could generate propulsion on a celestial scale overturned long-held assumptions about what was biologically possible. Such mechanisms hinted at evolutionary trajectories far beyond Earth's familiar tree of life, trajectories shaped not by oceans, forests, and atmospheres, but by the open void of interstellar space. The movement of 3I/Atlas closer to our planetary neighborhood became not just a scientific spectacle, but a moment of global significance. Public fascination soared as media outlets broadcast daily updates, turning orbital charts and light curve data into front-page headlines. Humanity found itself united in wonder, staring at the same data streams and contemplating the same questions. Unlike the quiet curiosity that surrounded earlier interstellar visitors, this event was charged with a sense of immediacy. Something alive was out there, and it was coming closer. The imagination of billions ran wild, not with fears of invasion, but with the sheer enormity of what the discovery implied. That the universe itself was alive with possibilities humanity had barely begun to grasp. The closer scientists looked, the more mysteries they uncovered. Temperature readings fluctuated in sync with internal signals, suggesting metabolic heat generation. The object's surface showed structural patterns, almost like ridges or networks, hinting at internal organization. Some speculated that what had been classified as an asteroid or comet might instead be a living structure in its entirety, a macroorganism whose body had been mistaken for stone and ice. If that were true, then 3I/Atlas represented not merely a carrier of life, but life itself, a singular entity drifting through the cosmos on journeys spanning millions of years. This interpretation raised the most profound question of all. What if life does not simply inhabit worlds, but also builds itself into the very vessels that travel between them? The line between biology and astronomy blurred, forcing scientists to reconsider definitions. Was 3I/Atlas an organism, a symbiotic construct of biology and geology, or something else entirely? An expression of life adapted to the grandest stage of all, the interstellar medium? Every hypothesis stretched human understanding to its limits, and yet the data kept returning with patterns that defied dismissal. As the object moved on its trajectory toward the inner solar system, anticipation grew. For NASA and other space agencies, the event marked an unprecedented opportunity. Spacecraft were repositioned, new mission plans drafted, and discussions arose about whether humanity should attempt direct engagement. Even without physical contact, the implications were monumental. The very act of watching a living interstellar traveler approaching Earth's neighborhood expanded the scope of biology, physics, and philosophy alike. The universe, once thought vast and indifferent, suddenly appeared alive with travelers carrying the story of survival across stars. This moment in history marked a threshold. Humanity had looked outward and for the first time confirmed that life had looked back, or at least drawn closer. Whether the presence inside 3I/Atlas represented microbial persistence, a vast singular organism, or an intelligence older than humanity could imagine, it was undeniable that something alive was moving toward us. The cosmos was no longer silent. It was breathing, pulsing, and moving in ways we were only beginning to perceive. The revelation that something alive resides within 3I/Atlas has compelled the world to explore uncharted realms of thought. Once it became clear that this interstellar visitor was more than inert rock and ice, the mystery deepened into a tapestry of scientific puzzles, cultural wonder, and philosophical tremors. While the initial shock established the basic truth that the object carries life and that it is moving toward us, the unfolding consequences stretch into every domain of inquiry. Each new observation demands fresh interpretations, and each interpretation expands the horizon of what humanity believes possible. The layers of analysis turn toward the conditions that could allow such a life to survive for potentially millions of years in the void. Conventional biology assumes energy, liquid solvents, and relatively stable environments are prerequisites. Yet within 3I/Atlas, the signals suggest metabolism, or at least a system of energy management, is occurring despite the frigid vacuum. This challenges the framework of biochemistry itself. Perhaps the organism relies not on carbon-based pathways familiar to Earth life, but on mechanisms tuned to cosmic environments, utilizing radiation as fuel, storing chemical potential in crystalline matrices, or employing quantum effects to minimize energy loss. Each of these possibilities breaks through what was previously considered biological law and suggests that life may adapt to conditions as alien as the spaces between stars. The chemistry of 3I/Atlas became a subject of feverish study. Spectral analysis revealed compounds that hinted at exotic processes, unusual organometallic structures, chains of molecules not found in terrestrial environments, and spectral signatures consistent with polymers that resist radiation damage. If such molecules form the structural basis of the living entity inside, then evolution has found a way to build tissues capable of withstanding cosmic hazards that would shred DNA and proteins. Scientists speculated that such a system might be more akin to engineered materials than to flesh or cell walls. To those interpreting the data, it seemed less like an accident of chemistry and more like a design born of necessity. With this chemical framework came the question of origin. Did 3I/Atlas form naturally within a system where such life evolved in parallel to ours? Or did it arise from deliberate intervention by a civilization capable of crafting life forms to travel the stars? If the latter, then what humanity is witnessing might not simply be a living thing, but a vessel of intention, engineered with precision beyond our imagination. The very fact that the object's trajectory altered in response to solar influences lends weight to this idea. No comet should steer itself. No rock should align its jets with calculated precision. Something inside is guiding it, and whether that guidance is instinctive or purposeful remains the pivotal enigma. The cultural ramifications of this discovery unfolded in waves. Religions across the world confronted the implications of life arriving from beyond the solar system. For some, this was confirmation that creation extended far beyond Earth, and that divine design embraced countless forms. For others, it represented an unsettling challenge to human centrality, forcing doctrines to adapt. Artists, writers, and filmmakers seized upon the imagery, producing works that sought to capture the awe and disquiet of a universe suddenly alive in ways no myth had quite prepared us for. Public gatherings under night skies multiplied, as communities sought to experience the unfolding spectacle together. watching as the distant point of light associated with 3I/Atlas grew brighter. Humanity, for perhaps the first time in history, shared not only the same sky but the same anticipation of contact with the unknown. Political consequences also emerged. Nations with advanced space programs debated whether to attempt contact, interception, or passive observation. Some argued that to approach too aggressively might provoke a reaction from the entity, assuming intelligence was involved. Others countered that failing to engage would squander the greatest opportunity in human history. The spectrum of responses reflected deep-seated differences in worldview, whether to treat 3I/Atlas as a scientific specimen, a potential ally, or a possible threat. In international forums, voices rose with urgency, and alliances shifted as nations sought to align themselves with strategies that could either maximize discovery or secure defense. The object's steady approach acted as a catalyst for global unity in some spheres and competitive posturing in others. Scientists continued to debate the mechanics of its motion. Traditional comet outgassing was insufficient to explain the precise maneuvers. Some hypothesized a network of internal channels that directed sublimated gases in controlled bursts, a natural propulsion system evolved over millennia. Others considered more radical possibilities: bioelectromagnetic fields manipulating plasma, or structural components acting as sails tuned to starlight. These concepts blurred the line between biology and technology, suggesting a hybrid existence where living tissue and functional design were inseparable. If true, then the entity inside 3I/Atlas might represent a form of life that does not simply adapt to environments, but builds itself into tools for survival, merging the organic with the mechanical as a matter of existence. As the object drew nearer, instruments detected fluctuations in local space around it. Plasma currents shifted unexpectedly, and faint disturbances appeared in the solar wind's flow. These anomalies hinted at active interaction with the environment. It was as if the entity within was shaping the conditions of its journey, sculpting invisible currents to ease its passage. If this were intentional, it suggested an understanding of space physics far beyond human mastery. If it were instinctual, it still demonstrated an evolved capacity to navigate environments most organisms would never encounter. Either way, it redefined what life could mean, not confined to ecosystems, but capable of harnessing the fabric of the cosmos itself. The psychological impact on humanity was profound. People found themselves contemplating not just the mechanics of survival, but the very definition of alive. Could life be defined by reproduction, metabolism, and adaptation? Or did the entity within 3I/Atlas force an expanded view? If an interstellar organism could persist without reproducing for millions of years, if it could function without ecosystems, and if it could manipulate celestial trajectories, then perhaps life was not a simple biological state, but a spectrum of existence. This redefinition brought with it a sense of humility. The categories humanity had devised to separate the living from the inert, the natural from the artificial, suddenly seemed parochial in the face of such grandeur. Meanwhile, speculation about communication flourished. The rhythmic patterns recorded from within the object seemed tantalizingly structured, as if forming sequences beyond simple biological cycles. Linguists, mathematicians, and cryptographers scoured the data, searching for recurring ratios or sequences that might signal intentional encoding. The possibility of receiving a message from the heart of an interstellar traveler electrified the imagination. If the signals were indeed communicative, they might carry the stories of civilizations long vanished, or the wisdom of a species that had traversed galaxies. If they were merely biological rhythms, then they were still a message of a different kind. Proof that life itself had bridged the chasm between stars. The media presented the unfolding drama with relentless intensity. Each new signal became headline news, each analysis a subject of feverish commentary. Yet beneath the surface spectacle lay a quieter revolution in scientific thought. Astrobiology, once a field defined by cautious speculation about microbial traces on Mars or Europa, suddenly found itself tasked with interpreting the behavior of a living interstellar traveler. Theorists restructured their models, not only for the origins of life, but for its potential futures. Life was no longer a phenomenon bounded by planets. It was now understood as something capable of leaping from star to star, transforming entire concepts of evolution and destiny. Debates also erupted around the idea of intent. If the entity within 3I/Atlas was intelligent, why was it approaching? Was it curiosity, necessity, or the continuation of a journey that had begun long before humans evolved? If it were instinctual, was humanity witnessing a migratory behavior on a scale unimaginable? Creatures crossing the gulfs between solar systems as casually as whales cross oceans? The interpretations varied, but the undercurrent was the same. Humanity was encountering something that could not be ignored, something that demanded an expansion of imagination as well as science. As weeks passed and the object drew ever closer, its presence became undeniable to the naked eye. Amateur astronomers could track it with backyard telescopes, and soon, even casual stargazers could locate its glow against the tapestry of stars. The psychological weight of seeing with one's own eyes an interstellar visitor carrying life transformed the event from scientific abstraction into shared human experience. The night sky no longer seemed distant and indifferent. It seemed alive, filled with movement and intent. For many, it evoked both wonder and unease, a recognition that the cosmos was not a static backdrop but a theater of unfolding encounters. The possibility that 3I/Atlas might pass near Earth's orbit created a sense of immediacy. Would humanity attempt to intercept it with probes or sample missions? Could such a mission be mounted quickly enough to reach it before it departed the system again? Engineers raced to design concepts, while politicians debated funding and risk. Every option seemed monumental. To engage meant entering direct relationship with something beyond comprehension, while to refrain meant watching the greatest opportunity in human history slip past. The dilemma underscored the fragility of human readiness for the unexpected, even as the universe delivered its mysteries uninvited. At the same time, thinkers turned to the long arc of human history. They noted how every great discovery, from fire to flight, from radio waves to space travel, had once seemed impossible until it became real. The discovery of life within 3I/Atlas fit into this lineage, yet on a scale far greater. It suggested that humanity was not an isolated phenomenon but part of a grand cosmic narrative, one in which life had been journeying between stars long before Earth's civilizations arose. This perspective infused the moment with a sense of destiny. Perhaps the encounter was not random at all, but part of a broader unfolding in which humanity was finally mature enough to notice the travelers who had always been passing through. What made the revelation most transformative, however, was its refusal to fit into human categories of aftermath or resolution. The presence within 3I/Atlas remained enigmatic, alive yet undefined, moving yet unexplained. The story was not one of closure, but of opening, a widening of possibility. Every scientific discipline, every cultural framework, every personal imagination now had to expand to accommodate the fact that life from beyond had entered our skies. Whether microbial or intelligent, whether instinctual or purposeful, whether solitary or representative of a vast network, it was alive, and it was approaching. The stars had always been symbols of distance and mystery, but now one of them had reached back. Humanity found itself poised at a threshold, gazing upward with eyes that could no longer unsee the truth. Life had crossed the interstellar gulf, and the encounter was already underway. The presence of life inside 3I/Atlas has become a mirror through which humanity examines itself. Every layer of data pouring in from telescopes and instruments not only reveals more about the object, but also forces reflection on the assumptions humanity has carried about life, intelligence, and survival. Each signal, each fluctuation, each detail of its approach reshapes the conversation into realms that until recently belonged solely to speculation or science fiction. Now, speculation feels like preparation for reality. One of the most pressing questions revolves around time. How long has the entity within 3I/Atlas been traveling? If it originated in another star system, then its journey could have taken tens of thousands, perhaps millions of years. To endure such spans requires strategies unlike anything known on Earth. Life on our planet is tied to cycles of birth and death, growth and decay in scales of years or centuries at most. But what kind of organism or system of organisms could sustain itself through epochs of stellar drift? The idea of biological stasis on such scales suggests that time itself might be experienced differently by interstellar life. Perhaps dormancy is its natural state, with brief periods of awakening triggered only by proximity to stars. This possibility challenges human perceptions of life as inherently active, proposing instead a model where patience is the ultimate evolutionary advantage. Linked to this is the question of consciousness. If the rhythms emanating from inside 3I/Atlas represent not mere metabolism but awareness, what would that awareness be like? Consciousness shaped by cosmic distances and eons of silence might differ fundamentally from the rapid sensory-driven awareness humans know. Such a being might not think in moments or days but in centuries, its sense of self spread across time like continents across an ocean. Interaction with such a form of life would require a radical adjustment of human expectations, demanding patience and interpretation beyond any precedent. Humanity might be standing at the edge of an encounter with a mind that spans not minutes, but millennia. This realization inspired new philosophical debates. For centuries, humans defined intelligence by tool use, language, and culture. But what if intelligence can also manifest as the capacity to harness the environment of the cosmos itself? If the life inside 3I/Atlas has survived across light years and navigated star systems, then it embodies a form of mastery, even if it has never built cities or carved symbols into stone. By this measure, intelligence is not just the manipulation of objects, but the adaptation of existence to the grandest scales imaginable. Such a redefinition places humanity within a broader spectrum of intelligence rather than at its peak. Speculation also turned toward origin worlds. If 3I/Atlas carried life from another system, then what kind of planet or environment could give rise to it? Perhaps its cradle was a world perpetually bombarded by radiation, where survival required chemistry impervious to destruction. Or perhaps it was born in oceans beneath icy crusts, evolving in darkness until it learned to escape its planetary home entirely. The possibility exists that it did not originate on a planet at all. Some scientists suggested it might have formed in nebulae, vast star-birthing clouds where exotic chemistry dances freely, creating networks capable of self-organization. If true, then life might not be planetary at all but stellar, woven into the very clouds that build galaxies. The movement of 3I/Atlas closer to our solar system encouraged new interpretations of contact. While no deliberate message had yet been received, the approach itself carried meaning. To many, it seemed an act of reaching out, a sign that life does not remain isolated forever. In this interpretation, the encounter was not an accident, but part of a natural pattern of connection written into the fabric of the universe. Just as ecosystems on Earth weave countless species into webs of interdependence, perhaps the cosmos itself fosters encounters between worlds, carrying travelers across gulfs to ensure that life remains linked across the stars. The role of humanity in such a network became a subject of contemplation. If 3I/Atlas carried life across space, then perhaps Earth too would one day send its own emissaries. Already, spacecraft like Voyager and Pioneer drift outward, carrying humanity's artifacts and messages. But what if the ultimate emissary is not machinery but life itself, adapted to endure the interstellar void? The encounter with 3I/Atlas could serve as a model for what humanity might one day become, not builders of ships but creators of living travelers, merging biology and exploration in ways that echo across the galaxy. At the same time, the ethical dimension of the discovery grew unavoidable. If the entity inside 3I/Atlas is alive, how should humanity respond? Is it to be studied, engaged, or left undisturbed? The question is not simply about science, but about respect. Encountering another form of life on Earth requires ethics of preservation. Encountering life from another star amplifies those obligations infinitely. The very act of sending probes or signals might represent intrusion into a being's most intimate processes. This awareness compelled scholars, philosophers, and religious leaders to argue for a code of cosmic ethics, a framework for how humanity engages with life beyond Earth. For the first time, the idea of a universal charter of interspecies respect gained traction, an attempt to prepare for interactions with beings humanity does not yet understand. Technological possibilities also came into focus. If 3I/Atlas is manipulating its trajectory through controlled outflows or exotic fields, studying those methods could revolutionize human propulsion. Imagine harnessing biology to travel between planets, or crafting systems that use starlight not as passive energy, but as navigational force. The discovery suggested that life itself could become a form of technology, a concept that might redefine aerospace and bioengineering. While some pursued these ideas with excitement, others cautioned against attempting to reverse engineer a living traveler. Doing so could risk misunderstanding its nature, or worse, disrupting its fragile survival. The tension between curiosity and caution became a defining theme of the era. The cultural imagination bloomed with interpretations. Musicians composed symphonies inspired by the rhythmic signals emanating from the object, interpreting them as cosmic heartbeats. Writers crafted epics envisioning the journeys such beings might have taken, threading their way through starfields long before human civilization arose. Visual artists portrayed 3I/Atlas not as rock or ice, but as a cocoon, glowing with inner vitality set against the infinite darkness of space. The encounter became a shared myth in real time, a living story to which billions contributed through their own lenses of awe and creativity. For scientists, the challenge was to maintain precision amid wonder. Observatories worldwide coordinated in unprecedented networks, pooling data to form composite pictures of the object. Algorithms searched for patterns across frequencies, while new models attempted to simulate the entity's behavior. One particularly striking observation was the consistency of signal response when solar radiation peaked. Each time solar wind buffeted the object, its rhythms shifted as though acknowledging the environment. This responsiveness further supported the idea of active engagement rather than passive survival. Whatever lived within was not only enduring but also reacting, aligning itself with the forces around it in a dance of resilience. The broader implications for the search for life in the universe became undeniable. For decades, efforts focused on exoplanets within habitable zones, looking for atmospheres rich in oxygen or methane as indicators of biology. 3I/Atlas shifted the paradigm. If life could exist within an interstellar traveler, then the universe might be teeming with such wanderers. Countless objects pass through solar systems unnoticed, many too faint to track. Each might carry within it seeds of life, emissaries of unknown origin, silently shaping the destiny of worlds they pass. This realization reframed the search. Not only should telescopes gaze at distant stars, but they should also watch carefully the space between them. If you like this video, please give it a like and subscribe to our channel. Also, leave your comments below and tell us, what are your thoughts on NASA finding life inside 3I/Atlas? We want to hear from you. Thank you for watching, and see you next time.